Order the Historic Preservation Board meeting for July 5th, 2022. First item up would be call to order. Ms. Coughlin?
Bill Hay?
Here.
Elizabeth Hawk?
Here.
Michael Hill?
Here.
Rachel Iannelli?
Here.
Asa Kamal? Jay Reeves?
Here.
Bill Warner?
Here.
You have quorum.
Okay, thank you. Next item up would be approval of the minutes.
Move to approve.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes carried. Next item up would be public comment. Is there anyone here to speak on an item that's not on the agenda? Okay.
Chair, Board, I'm Betsy Waite, Director of Wild Spaces and Public Places for the City of Gainesville. And tonight I just wanted to give you a quick update on the Thelma Bolton Center. So I came to you in May, so it's been about 2 months. And I also wanted to introduce Peter McNeese, who is a project manager for Wild Space and Public Places. So this will be his project. He'll be taking the reins from here on out, providing you with monthly updates. Tonight I just wanted to give you kind of a brief update of what has transpired in the last 2 months, just so you're aware of what we've been working on behind the scenes. So we've had a handful of meetings with Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs staff and the design team. So we've been brainstorming kind of how the future building can best serve the user group's needs and how we can maintain the historic fabric of the neighborhood. So we're still working through multiple options. We're very early on in this conceptual master planning stage. And so tonight we're going to show you one of the concepts that we've been evaluating. And again, very early, we don't even have a civil engineer on board yet. So we need to be looking at the flood zone, stormwater requirements, and so many other elements to make this project really functional. But I just wanted to kind of show you what we've been doing. Get the overhead. We can take a look at that. And while everyone, while we get staff to kind of bring the overhead up and take a look at kind of just one of these conceptual phases, I also wanted to let you know that we've been meeting with the city's land rights coordinator to better understand some of the site constraints and stuff that might limit the future development of the site. So the current concept that we're going to take a look at here in just a minute locates the building slightly north of where it stands today on the footprint and a little further away from that floodplain. And let me see. So again, this is very preliminary. But the auditorium, so that main portion of the building that you see from Northeast 5th Street. Oh.
While she's getting it up, can you just hang on?
Okay.
Because I want them to be able to follow along with what you're talking about.
Sure.
Give me just a sec. She can turn the.
I also wanted to let you know, so over the last 2 months, we've been meeting with staff from Austin Historical. So we're really excited. So our goal is to salvage and refurbish and reuse as many of the materials in the existing building as possible. So Austin Historical, they have some great ideas of how we can reuse those existing windows to really maintain that character and also meet current energy codes and requirements. So we're working on a lot of details, but they have some really brilliant individuals, and we're excited to see what opportunities come forward. And we're also going to be meeting with some of the local salvage companies just to see kind of what within the building could also be kept local and repurposed, so we're not adding too many materials to the waste stream. Okay, so now we have the overhead brought up. So as you can see, there'd be kind of a little bit more of a plaza feel to the southern portion of the site. The building, again, this is very high-level conceptual, just one of many concepts we're evaluating. But we would be maintaining the auditorium off of Northeast 5th Street with this concept. It would just move a little bit further north, and we're staying a little bit further out of the floodplain. And some of those additional amenities within the building would be more consolidated. We think would be more efficient for user groups and just maybe a little bit more just beneficial or practical for people who would be renting the spaces. So I want to make you aware that in the next month or two, we're going to be having some focus groups with users and community members to better understand how the future building can serve their needs. And we also are going to be putting together a solicitation for the demolition of the building with the acknowledgement that we absolutely have to get a certificate of appropriateness before we move forward. But city procurement can take up to 6 months if not longer. So we're just going to be kind of getting that ball rolling. What did I miss?
No, that's covered it.
Okay.
Let me say something about the. Hello, I'm Peter McNeese. I work for Wild Spaces and Public Places, and as Betsy said, this is going to be my project, and it's an unusual situation because I consider myself a historic preservationist. I have renovated a historic house in the University Heights district that I currently live in. In my last job, I probably was responsible for renovating a half dozen historic homes in the community, in that specific community. And so now I'm in a situation where, maybe my skills will help to deal with a difficult situation that we're faced here. But my goal is going to be to come to every one of these meetings and to give you an update every month on how we're progressing, and to talk about the things that we're doing to try to maintain the historic character of the existing building, to repurpose and reuse a lot of those materials. And we're finding companies that are particularly skilled in making renovations to things like all of the windows at this building. So our plan is to end up with, I guess what we've talked about is the least worst option in a bad situation. But I will be here every month to answer questions and to present all the information that we have as we move towards a certificate of appropriateness application at some point in the future. Yes, sir.
Yes, Bill.
The last time this was before us, we were talking about renovation of the existing structure. At this point, what is any of the existing structure to remain in what you're putting before us?
You want to take that?
I mean, it's looking like complete demolition.
We're looking at repurposing as many elements as we can to
You
really
mean the
restore.
bricks? You're talking about repurposing the bricks or what?
We're definitely looking at windows. We're going to be bringing in some salvage companies to evaluate other elements within the structure to see what might be
So
feasible.
you are proposing the total demolition of what's there?
That is correct, sir.
And let me add that that wasn't our preference. We had embarked on a renovation of the building, and we had gotten funding from the city commission, and had actually started work with the architects that were putting together the construction documents when they noticed that there were some signs of structural failure in the building. And that's when we hired some structural engineers to come out and do a thorough investigation of the building and to prepare their recommendations. Neither of us are structural engineers. We were just relying on their report, which of course we can share with everyone to show what was wrong with the building. And their opinion, they felt like these were things that justified even considering something like demoing the building and starting over again.
So your position is you feel like you need to stick something there.
I'm sorry, say that again.
So you feel like, you're going to demo what's there and put something there.
No, I think it would be our intent to rebuild something in the, to honor the historic significance of the Thelma Bolton Center, to reuse as many of the materials, to maintain that architectural style. We've hired an architectural firm that has presented before this board, and even during the renovation phase, they were talking about returning the building to some of its original key historical features.
Okay.
Over the 50
Who
years.
is hired to do this?
It's called Wanamaker Jensen Architects is the name of the company.
Same ones we saw when they did the additions.
Right.
Yeah, and I understand that it's very preliminary, and we don't have a lot of information right now, and that our intent is to share as much information as we can throughout this process and
Right.
make this as collaborative a process as possible. Betsy talked about us reaching out to the community and try to get feedback from the community and talk about what things are important to them and what activities are important to them to have at this building. And so my hope is that in the end, if we do end up moving forward with a demolition of the building, we end up with something that still honors the history of this structure, that doesn't detract from the historic character of the community, and that is far more useful for the community groups that use the Thelma Bolton Center.
Okay.
say, as
Michael,
soon
I'm sorry,
I
Betsy.
just want to let you know, as soon as we have design elevations, we will absolutely bring them to this group. This is, again, we've made some progress with kind of just evaluating the needs and from the user groups, but we definitely need to dig in a lot further. I just wanted to bring you, show you a little bit of progress today and just have a dialogue.
Okay. You still have a question?
Yeah, I just have my one question is now, Ms. Way, Mr. McNeese, first I want to thank you guys for bringing this presentation to us. Now, here's my couple of questions. My one question is this. Now, I understand that the building is structurally deficient right now, given what has happened to it, and I can understand actually why it's being brought to this board about demolition. But I have to ask this. Now, is the whole building deficient? Like, I mean, is there any way possible here to not have to take the total demolition route? Is there a wing that we can save and maybe just incorporate and maybe demo the rest and incorporate it? Is there anything? Because, I mean, like, I want to say that I do believe what you guys are saying, but again, as a preservationist, I'm skeptical about this, and I would also like to see the structural engineer report and their opinion, please. So, yeah, I'm just going to ask on you guys then: is there any way that we can save any piece of this building? Because I mean, yeah, unfortunately, this is a terrible situation to be in, but we must do the best that we can, because I'm going to tell you something right now. Gainesville in the state of Florida is an exemplary community, and we must make sure to maintain that as an exemplary community. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Hill, I definitely recognize that question. We've received that from neighbors whenever we're doing site visits. So we would love to preserve this building, but I think we're responsible for also the economic feasibility of creating a community space. So with enough time and money, I think anything is possible. But with the auditorium, which is the majority of this building, having that catastrophic failure of the structural members, the undersized footers, and all this other damage, I think it's in the city's best interest that we look forward.
So here is my comment first, and this is not directed at either of you, but I just wanted to go on record. I'm really actually disappointed in Gainesville, because I feel like I looked at the engineer's report and there had already been fixes to this. So this was a known issue that the city allowed to get to this point, and that really disappoints me as someone who cares about historic buildings. I think you two especially you have a very large challenge, because this is a very beloved space among our community. I do appreciate you wanting to keep the windows and the bricks. But what I want to know is that, are you developing a plan to maintain this building after it's built? Or is this going to be another thing where in 30 years we're like, oh, we have to tear it down again because no one took care of it? And I'm also curious if Gainesville has done an audit of its other historic properties to see what conditions they're in and if they're also facing these structural failures. So this is not really directed at you. You just happen to be the people up here. It's not your fault that the city didn't do its due diligence in maintaining. But you're going to have to face community members. So I think this is good for you to face this pushback from us. If we have to demo the building, that's a big tragedy, and it's not a vote that I really want to make. But I understand that if it's not economically feasible, that may be what we're faced with.
Yes, ma'am. I think that's a very valid question and point that you are making. I guess in my position, I can't speak to the city's budget and the long-term path forward and being responsible with future budgets and planning for maintenance and operating costs. I think Pete and I as civil engineers are very cognizant of trying to, anything we touch, we want to make it as maintenance friendly as possible, because we are looking down the road. I think we have a vested interest in making sure the improvements that Wild Spaces makes can be maintained in the long term. With that being said, again, city commissions can't approve future budgets, and I think maintenance has always been underfunded, which is really a tragedy.
No.
Two more comments. One, rather than, I think you really need to back off the whole item in terms of replacement and evaluate fundamentally whether or not you just need to put something back there. that maybe has original, or the windows in it. I say that because right now Thomas Center is peeling paint and signs of deterioration approaching what, as a private citizen, I'd be cited for code enforcement violation. And that you can get cited for peeling paint. And with the city not keeping up Thomas Center in the shape that it should be, and being one of the most used properties in the whole city, I don't think it's time to run out and try to put up something that will take away money from the assets that we do have.
Sure, I absolutely understand that thought process. And I agree that maintenance should be funded to take care of those historical gems within the city of Gainesville. I guess Pete and I have been giving a directive by the city commission to proceed forward with this course of action. So I guess we're following orders at this point in time.
Okay.
But I agree. I think that your criticism is quite fair. It's not just the Thelma Bolton Center that is struggling with some maintenance issues that should have been addressed a long time ago. You're right. The Thomas Center, I mean, peeling paint is the least of their problems. We have roof tiles that are falling
Right.
off of the building and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
it's looking shabby.
and it's not something that's unique just to municipal government. I mean, in the historic district that I live in, half of the contributing structures are in some form of disrepair. And, and it's difficult. People don't spend the money on maintenance that they should. It's a lot. It makes the news when you spend money and you open a brand new facility like the Clarence R. Kelly Community Center that we just had our grand opening at. But there's not a lot of glamour in maintaining existing facilities and making them, last for their entire design life.
Okay. All right, there was just some observations I've got. As being somebody that's worked on projects where we've had to reconstruct buildings, entire buildings, like the Episcopal Church on First Street when it burned, and other instances where we had to save parts of buildings and reconstruct parts of buildings and try to do what we could to put back what was lost. And the way I see this, what you're proposing, it's a new building, new site plan, everything about it is new. I don't see that taking pieces from the previous building and incorporating them really does what we're after. I say that either we replace the auditorium, modernize the rest of the building like we originally intended, or you're taking it down. And if you take it down, I think at that point, you need to look at what you would have to come for this board normally. What is compatible with the rest of the neighborhood? That potential, that southern end of the neighborhood, we're talking turn of the century structures. We're talking Thomas Center stuff. We're not talking a traditional building that's transitional with some deco modern elements, which is what that had. That is not a mid-century building, and that's the direction the additions started going last time when we had problems. And if you came back with a mid-century building, quite likely we would turn it down, because that has nothing to do with the context or surroundings around it if we're looking at it in terms of a brand new building. So I'm confused, because what you've got is trying to marry those two different principles. Either you're reconstructing and restoring, or you're replacing. And I don't think you can do both.
Well, we're not architects either, and
Yeah.
we rely on the expertise of the design professionals that we hire. In my previous job, I came before the board multiple times when there was a particular project where we really needed some guidance and we wanted some input from the Historic Preservation Board on how we should steer the design of that project and that building.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do here as well.
Sure.
As soon as the architects establish a footprint for the building, then their focus changes to, what is the exterior going to look like? How are they going to incorporate all those things? And I'm looking forward to presenting that information to you to get some feedback that I can communicate to them so that we
Yeah.
can steer them in the right direction as well.
What I would encourage you, because I deal with this dilemma all the time, where the civil engineering steers the project, then you have to come back and deal with the exteriors of the buildings. And if you have an existing building in the mix, that all changes. And if you're trying to, if you say capture the character of the building and you're putting it in a different place with a different site, there are two different approaches there. And that's my dilemma too, looking at it
Yeah.
as a board member.
We will absolutely share the information that we get from our civil engineers, because that process has already started, where they're talking about the fact that we're encroaching into the floodplains and things that may have been allowed when this building was first constructed, or maybe they just didn't know
Right.
as much as we know now. But now it does present some problems, and so we have to kind of strike a balance and figure out how do we
Right.
comply with those things, but at the same time deal with the historic structure.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say that replacing the Thelma Bolton with an office building with some large old windows in it does not solve any problems.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and I don't think that's our intent by any
Okay.
means.
Well, I'm not aiming this entirely at you. I'm aiming it at you and your team. Because like I said, we did have some issues with the additions they proposed before, because they were steering the building to a mid-century modern character, which it never really was. And trying to update it in that regard. And, yet you look at the building and it has very traditional elements that are compatible with the houses around it. And, that was one of the things people like about it. It fit the neighborhood, much like Kirby Smith fits the neighborhood.
And we've had some successes recently, like with the renovation of the Hartman House.
Yep.
And we hope that this will also be, in the end, a success story, or at
Well,
least
it's
one
it's a
that-
challenge, and I understand the site issues too, with the water and all that, but, yeah. All right, well, thank you very much for bringing it to us.
Appreciate your feedback.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay,
Hello, Melanie Barr. So it looks like Wild Spaces Public Places is proceeding as though the building is going to be demolished, because they're
Well-
showing you a great big new building. And that, for one thing, that building is way too big for the neighborhood. There's no parking. It's going to be demolishing the 80-year-old barbecue behind it where the soldiers used to party, and the shuffleboards, all that. So the Thelma Bolton is a historic building, as you all know. This is where history happened. It's got a state historic marker, and it says it's a state heritage site. So it's not just any building. It can be restored. If this building can be restored, the Thelma Bolton can be restored. This building was restored. And it does cost a lot of money, no doubt, but if they have $3 million to build a new building, they can spend $3 million restoring a significant historic building. It not only has significance for the soldiers, it has significance because Thelma Bolton worked there as a hostess for the soldiers, and then she was the recreation center director, so for her. There's other firms that can take buildings that are collapsing and make them beautiful again. That's an example. This building was falling apart in South Florida, and then it was restored. I know I have a picture somewhere, but there needs to be a second opinion from a structural engineer or from a preservation architect. The person who gave their opinion, here it is, they didn't necessarily focus on saving historic buildings. They are just looking at it from the analysis of an engineer. So we need to think about its history, and I think that's critical. You're the preservation board. You're supposed to think about history first, and then worry about financials. You don't even worry about financials. That's for someone else. But what do the citizens want? The citizens don't want a new building. They want history. And, for example, Tampa, there was an article in the Gainesville Sun, and the Tampa Bay Housing Authority was trying to restore 2 old houses, and they said the homes are in poor shape, and it would be cheaper to raise and replace them with replicas. But we need to save our history, not destroy it. This is a passion project, so it's not going to make total fiscal sense, but it's the right thing to do. So you can save this building. I know it'll cost a lot of money. Get a second opinion. I already had someone say that his band will play a fundraiser to pay for the second opinion. And there's groups of people that want to help get that done. So look at it first, preservation. I don't see how it's not possible. I know it's going to cost a lot of money, but I think it's possible. And it has significance, state historic site, heritage site. Let's save it.
Melanie, just a sec.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind. Now, I do understand where everything's coming, but now my question is this: now going forward, because granted, like I said, we have an opinion piece from a structural engineer, but you know, I would like to ask, and maybe this is a question you might be able to answer, and maybe Ms. Kaufman may answer. If we publicly notice a meeting, can the board go down there with staff so we can actually see the building for ourselves? Because you know, I mean, people can write what they want on paper all day, but it's like, you know, I would like to look at it myself. If that's possible, or is like, will that cost us too much time? It's kind of a question directed towards you and Kathleen.
The board could, you know, I'll give it to you, but Kathleen.
Ms. Kaufman.
The board can certainly meet anywhere off-site.
Right.
Typically, and sometimes historic preservation boards have met. Their normal meetings at historic sites. It just has to be properly noticed.
Right.
My concern is that I think I was one of the last people to be in there when it was safe to go in. So
Yeah.
that would be up to, it would really be up to,
It'd be up to the city.
it would really be up to parks to figure out if that's something doable, but certainly
Like-
we could do a notice as a special meeting and do a field trip down there, and you could at least walk around.
Yeah.
Could we maybe form, and Mr. Chair, maybe this is a question for you. Could we maybe form like a quote unquote ad hoc committee to go and see the building? So maybe it's like, we're not taking all 9 of us, maybe we're taking like 3 or 4 of us there.
Still has to be noticed.
Still has to be noticed.
Well, I know it still has to be noticed, but I'm saying, like, instead of taking all 9 boards, could we maybe just take like 4?
I think if you're going to do it, then open it up to all board members.
Okay.
And then the public will come, so it won't be
Yeah.
just
Uh,
a
No.
quick.
No.
The public
Not
won't
public.
come?
It's not a party.
No,
And the
It's
public,
what?
We don't want the public to come into the building with us, you know what I mean?
it's
Well,
dangerous right now.
I understand
And
that.
I'm not even sure if the city's going to let us in without her.
Well, and
That's-
the city's already neglecting it. There was vines growing on it, mildew's growing on it, vines are
Okay.
growing in
Okay,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
Don't
They're
worry
already
about that.
neglecting it.
So, but yeah, that was just a question. Thank you.
But I think all boards have to have, the reason you notice it is so the public can attend.
No, we'd have to notice it so we could meet as a committee. There is one other way to do it, and that's where you don't let the board speak at all. And we've done that before, too.
Okay, but remember, this can be restored, so can the Thelma
All right,
Bolton.
thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that'd like to speak to anything that's not on the agenda? Okay. Yes.
Hi, I'm Anthony Ackrell. I don't know what was said beforehand, I just got here, but in regards to the Bolton Center, I agree very much that with a masonry structure, I don't see what the issue is if it was a wooden thing full of termites, but if you have all 4 walls on all sides are structurally sound and the main issue is the roof,
Yeah.
to me, I would say that's hugely, easily worth restoring.
Okay. I'll share what's going on, just so he knows. That what's going on with the building is not only have the trusses failed, but they've spread and they're pulling the outside walls out. So the building is significantly compromised. However, there was also things in the structural report that talks about foundations and other things, which, given when it was built, it's not going to meet today's standards either. So that's
Okay.
pretty much every historic building. So, but the building is in imminent danger of collapse.
Okay.
The auditorium section.
I've seen drawings of the proposed structure. I know that's in a extremely early stage, but I would like to see that look a whole lot more in keeping with the neighborhood than what it does.
Okay.
I hope that can be addressed.
All right, thank you. Okay,
Question, would it be possible to get the first engineering firm to come and speak to the board about if we can't go into the building because it's dangerous, could the engineering firm come and give their presentation so that the board and the public can hear it and it's a little bit more transparent for everyone? Would that be possible?
is that a possibility?
I'm sure we could pay them to come and facilitate that.
Because I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get into it, given how bad it is.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a city call.
We can look and see if they're available to come to an evening meeting.
Okay, I would be supportive of that, just to help us understand. And
I just want to mention that people are traveling now, and it's hard to get everybody to attend a meeting in July and maybe even August.
Okay.
So
All right.
there's not a rush, and she did mention 6 months, so, because people are gone and I know people want to
Yeah.
come. They
It
won't
wouldn't be
back
this
till-
month anyway.
Yeah.
It would
Until
be,
the semester starts.
it'll be later, but we'll let
Okay.
them deal with that if they can do that. Okay? All right, that concludes public comment. Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate you keeping us updated, and I realize all it is just a site plan right now. But, you can see the board has concerns, and it may be you come back with options next time. Maybe this is the one we think is the best, this is the one that's another option or something. I don't know. That's up for you guys to consider. Okay, and thank you. Okay, that brings us to board presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I felt this was an important thing to have you all discuss previous to our public hearings because we are constantly having metal roof items come before the board. And it's a hugely important topic. It's not to be taken lightly, nor would you take it lightly. I understand that. But we need to have some things in place where the guidelines currently don't really firmly guide us. We need to be consistent with all the applicants so that they feel they're being treated fairly. And there is a recommendation at the end of this. It's not really meant, it's just meant to kind of spur your discussion.
Okay.
If you wanted to vote on it, great, you could. If you had changes you wanted to make, great. But I think it would be hugely helpful to all of us to kind of just get this out in the open. And I have actual legislation. We were being told what the legislation was last month. And so
Right.
now I have for you what the actual legislation says that was recently passed by the state. And you have the document in front of you. If it's okay with you, I would like to read it into the record
Please do.
so that it's there and available. As you know, we've been seeing an increase in applications requesting metal roofs for a number of reasons. Some of those reasons are the obvious. They last a lot longer than the asphalt shingle or composition shingle. There is typically less maintenance to them. And in recent years, shingle roofs have apparently been denied coverage by insurance companies if their older roof wasn't going to be replaced immediately. And this was causing great heartburn for homeowners, as you can imagine, and as some of you have dealt with. The problem with this is the Preservation Board is tasked with preserving historic structures and the character of our historic districts. Our city guidelines were created from the federal guidelines, the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. There are also standards for preservation. And because the roof is a major character defining feature, there are certain materials appropriate for certain types of styles of houses, and there are materials that are not appropriate. Roof materials and their compatibility and appropriateness are reviewed on a case-by-case basis. They're determined by historical documentation, if it exists, or what material was known to be on the structure the longest within the last 50 years. It is not a correct assumption to assume that preferred roofing material should be approved just because other houses in the vicinity may have the same material. As stated before, an appropriate roof material is based on the house that it is on, the house's age, style, historic integrity. These are all things we look at, and they all contribute in considering what is an appropriate material. The other reason why the board has not traditionally been approving metal roofs in some of our historic districts is because the bright silver aluminum metal is so reflective and obvious that it can actually detract from the historic house visually. When several houses along one block or one street change to this material, It very much changes the character of that street, neighborhood, or even the district. And over time, you really get a sense of that change. Something the Historic Preservation Board is trying to maintain. They're trying to maintain the character, not see this general changeover over a period of years. The legislative review. So the Florida legislature concluded a special legislative session specifically to address property insurance. The legislature passed two bills. It's Senate Bill 2D and Senate Bill 4D. They were signed into law by Governor DeSantis on May 26, 2022, when all changes went into effect immediately. The one that really relates most to this particular issue that we're dealing with is Senate Bill 2D, and it included language regarding separate roof deductibles and roof age, and specifically, it states that property insurance companies are allowed to offer a policy with a separate roof deductible. There's an opt-out endorsement, which means you must be offered or be allowed to decline the roof deductible by signing a form. Insurance companies must offer a premium credit or discount for selecting a policy with a separate roof deductible. An insurance company cannot refuse to issue or renew a homeowner's insurance policy on a home with a roof less than 15 years of age solely because of the roof's age. Now, if that home is 15 years or older, an insurance company must allow that homeowner to have a roof inspection performed by an authorized inspector before they can require the roof to be replaced or in order to have the policy issued or renewed. Now, with that 15 years or older roof, the insurance company may not refuse to issue or renew a homeowner's insurance policy on a roof solely because it's 15 years or older if that inspection of the roof indicates that the roof has 5 years or more of useful life. That literally boils down to getting a roof inspection, and if the inspector said you've got 5 years or more, they have to renew or issue your policy. Colored metal roofs. Colored metal roofs may be a way that the Historic Preservation Board can allow these homeowners more flexibility with the roof that does have twice the lifespan of shingle roofs. A darker color than the bright silver will not generate the blinding reflectiveness that typical metal roofs can create. Metal roofs can also come in very similar colors to what this Historic Preservation Board has been approving in shingles, mostly in grays, tans, and browns are typically what we've seen for the shingle roof colors. Creating a matrix where certain colors have been pre-approved by the Historic Preservation Board would make it much easier for homeowners to get approved in a timely manner without having to wait for board approval, especially if they are anxious about an insurance policy renewal. And we've had that situation come before us too. Like, the homeowners are here, like, I can't wait another month, my policy is going to get canceled. However, it is not recommended, well, it's your staff's not recommending to you to base any of your guidelines changes on what the insurance industry is doing. Insurance companies are not telling people that they can't have the shingle roofs. That was never the case. And now they cannot deny coverage to any shingle roof that legitimately has 5 years of life left to it. There's simply no way of knowing what the insurance companies will do in the next 3, 5, or 10 years anyway. It is not advisable for this board to hear requests for a metal roof based on what an insurance company is telling them, because the board should then be prepared for every single applicant to come to you with that reason. And you would have to approve that application based on the precedent you set. So here's my recommendation. That regular metal roofs, regular meaning the silver, the galvalume, and those kind of things, those requests should still come to the board, as they do now, on a case-by-case basis. Of course, if the existing building has metal, we allow it to have metal, and that's a staff approval. This is simply talking about a change in roofing material. Those particular historic house styles that utilize a specialized roofing material, such as barrel tile, flat concrete tile, or shake, if we were so lucky to have a house that still had a shake. We'll still have to come to the board for any changes in material, though this kind of drastic material change would not be recommended by staff. Shingle may be converted to metal and may be approvable by staff if certain colors were selected from this color chart that you were supplied with. And of course, it would be, if it's not from that particular company, it would be whatever is the corresponding color on another company's color chart. Right now, I have listed there for you, this is the last picture. Did you not get one? Oh. Right now, it's basically, I have the colors that we usually see in shingles, with the exception of the dark green, because some historic houses did have an old green tile or roof.
Or a shingle roof.
Shingle roof. So it's the light browns, the tans, the grays, and the dark brown. It is not any of the blues or reds family. It's not the reflective metals such as copper. I currently do not have on there the white or the black because they're kind of the two extreme at the ends, and I feel like the white would still be a bright situation, which we're trying to avoid. And so that's my recommendation. It would be across the board for all the districts. Again, if people actually wanted to change over to the silver one, it would still come to this board. And you do have some photographs of other houses in the historic district, so you can kind of see what happens to the house when you're looking at it and it's got the bright silver metal on it, and what happens when you look at a house when it's got the colored metal on it. So I think if we stayed with the muted earth tones, it's similar to what we approve in shingle colors, but it's giving the homeowners, we're trying to kind of meet them halfway and give them that option of the durability that they're looking for.
Okay. Board discussion?
Well, for purposes of discussion, I would move that we adopt the staff recommendations.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Yes, Rachel? No? Okay.
No comment.
No comment. Bill is recommending that we adopt your recommendation. Is there a second?
I second. Can I do that?
You can do that. Yes, Phil, you had a question?
I was in a second.
Okay.
Oh, never mind.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further conversation or questions?
I mean, just, can staff comment?
Yes, please do.
I think this will save you a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
It's hard for you to be reviewing these things on a case-by-case basis, and, you know, I'm telling you one thing, what's appropriate for the house and what's appropriate for the style, and you're hearing the sad stories from the homeowners about other things. So hopefully this will be looked upon as the preservation board offering a peace offering and trying to help people in the historic districts.
Okay.
I think it also gives people a good guideline, like they have a firm guideline that you can give them now and say, if you want to do this, here's your options. And if you don't want to do this, then good luck with the board. So.
Okay, and the thing I'd like to just point out, if you look at the pictures, the two silver roofs versus the gray roof, it's a world of difference in whether or not you see the house or you see a roof that you need sunglasses for. Yeah, yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Because I know this is really major, because most of the conversion we see is that people change for kind of performance related, durability related decisions also. And we don't see a lot of kind of spatially spread metal roofs in historic districts. So sometimes it's just the analogy is what's across the street or maybe one house in the block. or nearby block. So the only concern and maybe question to Kathleen is this is gonna produce more? Do you think this is, from what we see, do we see more of the request historically for the past year coming to this board, targeting one specific color, and that's, or do we see across different colors?
So right now, with the metal roofs, we haven't seen any requests for colors. It's all been galvalume, 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 because it is the cheapest one out there.
It is also the most reflective, so
Reflective,
people think, well, actually, we've had somebody try a white roof and we didn't approve it. But that's what people think is the most efficient as far as reflectivity. However, if you do the research on the paint colors, these paints are formulated in such a way that it reflects sun more than a normal paint would. And it actually, like Kathleen has mentioned, you get a longer lifespan with the painted roofs than you do with the galvalume.
Yeah.
So that's a big plus.
But did we see anything in the dark color tones and how that's gonna affect it? Because these are not performing, as far as my knowledge, gonna be. They're not gonna be performing well. So, but do we see any requests happen in this city?
So with shingles, we do. With
Yeah.
shingles, we have dark browns is a popular color for roofs.
Yeah, well, even black roofs. Yeah. It's just, I think my experience is it's been a matter of thing. Once somebody puts one in and they find out the cost is not that different, people follow. And while historically we did have some silver roofs, they were primarily, at least in the Northeast, they were primarily pressed in shingles that were historically painted silver. But like I say, that's, the problem is the image you're creating throughout the neighborhood, because it's spreading right now, big time. And
Yeah, and that's what having this discussion. Are we ready for a lot of people to come without coming to the board, seeing different analogy, and then you're just gonna follow with multiple colors? How that's gonna visually impact a whole block, for example?
Well, I
It's
think
open
that's,
for discussion, by the way.
yeah, I think what we were doing is relying on staff to pick out muted colors that follow the line of what shingles already are. Because the board typically does not regulate color, but there's been instances where we've talked about, like roofing has become one of those instances. And to take you back about 20 years ago, when a house was done in Pleasant Street by the Housing Authority, we approved a metal roof. The next thing we know, it's fire engine red, which is not at all what we would have approved.
But I thought we regulate colors because we look at compatibility. When the material comes, we ask
We
for
regulate
sample.
colors, but we do not regulate colors of houses. I mean, we regulate materials, but not colors of houses or anything else.
But we can.
We have
can
that
because we can
ability,
ask for the color,
and
whether it's gonna be.
but I would not get into regulating colors, as most historic districts avoid that, just because it's very, very difficult, unless you're in a very strict place like Nantucket or Williamsburg or someplace like that. This is a situation where we're talking about roofing. And as Kathleen has also said, not all silver roofs would not be disapproved instantly. They would just have to come before the board, and we would have to make that decision. And then once again, you're getting back to the styling of the house. Is it appropriate for the house and that type of thing?
I have a question about this. It doesn't say anything about 5 feet crimp versus the standing seam. Is that an issue?
That is an issue, and that's a great point. You should add in there, you should just reaffirm because you're also having to fight that every time people are up here. You should just reaffirm that this is for standing seam or what they call the ultra rib, but not the 5V crimp.
You know, the only issue I would say is, I mean, I kind of support that direction, but the only issue is it does vary from neighborhood to neighborhood. Because in Pleasant Street, you did have a lot of 5B crimp. So that's the only
We
exception.
can add stipulation, maybe, for the, if you don't mind, for the motion that it's, the replacement will follow or will be compatible with what's available in the context, and we can leave it just as broad as it is. If that's okay.
Well, we have a precedent for dealing with 5E versus the more preferred, rather the more appropriate covers. So I think we have that in place. That's a separate issue than what we're talking about with these are guidelines in addition to what we have already established.
Correct, it's an addition, it's not replacing.
This is not replacing.
It's not replacing anything.
It's an additional section.
This
of
is
the guidelines.
enhancing the communication.
Because there's just some gaps in our guidelines that don't really,
Well, when they were written 15 years ago, nobody was doing metal roofs.
but, and thank you for reminding me, because I did not actually put it in my written narrative, but I did do research, by the way, with many roofers,
Yeah.
and spoke to them about this, and I had no idea. You know, the metal roof, the plain metal roof, is guaranteed by most companies, including the company that provided the color chart. It's like a 40-year guarantee. You add the paint color on top of it, you do one of these painted colors, it's another 20 years. It's another 20 years because of the material in the paint and then how it's applied to the metal.
Yeah, the coating adding more.
It's an incredibly, now that doesn't mean your insurance company is
That's what I was
going
going
to
to
cover it.
add. There is the catch-22.
But that's an
Would fly. I mean,
That is an
I happened to hear yesterday Tri-County Metals ad, which still says make this roof your next roof your last. Well, that message still hasn't gotten through to insurance underwriters.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there, I mean, there's no other comment, correct?
No.
We're good? Okay. Motion and a second.
I think we should roll call.
Let's roll call. Yeah.
Phil Haight? Liz Hawk?
Aye.
Michael Hill?
Aye.
Rachel Iannelli?
Aye.
Asa Kamal?
Aye.
Jay Reeves?
Aye.
Bill Warner? Motion passes.
Okay. Okay, good. Well needed. Thank you. That brings us to the public hearing portion, Kath.
Which is that?
It's for a metal roof.
There you go.
Okay. This is public hearing number 1. It's COA 22.
To swear in.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Anybody who is here to speak for one of the public hearing items, can you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to provide to the board here today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. And we have two requests for deferral, actually, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So you're on your agenda, public hearing 5 and public hearing 6. Those are companion items, essentially, because one is a demolition and the next is the new construction for the same lot. They were noticing a previous thing you were doing with demolition, and they divided the COAs as you had requested the other applicant, so that's why there are 2 different applications. They are going to pull those items until the August meeting because they are going to get a second opinion with a structural engineer.
Okay.
So you only have public hearings 1 through 4 today. Which brings us to public hearing 1. This is COA 22-00053. The address is 209 Northwest 11th Street. This is University Heights North. It is a contributing structure. Date of construction is 1940. The property is a modest one-story, side-gabled, minimal traditional home. It's currently being used as a duplex. It's wood frame with stucco.
I changed it back to a single unit.
Oh, okay. It's the property appraiser has you as a duplex. Sorry. Well, we like that. We like that. The wood frame with stuccoed exterior house currently has an asphalt shingle roof, and its predominant feature is a gabled entryway supported by square piers with a brick stoop. This is a COA to replace the asphalt shingle roof with a metal roof, 26 gauge and galvalume. And actually, on your report, I have that it is standing seam. It's not, but it's not 5E crimp. It's the ultra rib with the much lower profile than the standing seam. The recommended treatment for the replacement of roofing materials on contributing structures is to stay consistent with what the roofing material was at the time of construction, or to match existing material, which is a composition shingle, is what's on there now. So, interestingly enough, well, I did permit research as far back as I could go with that. It did not provide any information on the changes to the roof. However, the Florida Master Site File form from the 1980 survey indicated that this structure originally had a stamped metal roof. And of course, once you know an earlier roofing material, that trumps everything else. Like, you can go back to metal if it had metal originally. The Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation that are to be applied, they're to be applied in a reasonable manner, taking into consideration economic and technical feasibility. The standard that applies in this situation is Standard 2. The historic character of a property shall be retained and preserved. Removal of historic materials or alteration of features and spaces that characterize a property shall be avoided. Our guidelines provide the framework for the board to be able to make informed decisions on a case-by-case basis with the ultimate goal of satisfying the applicant's desired outcome while still maintaining the historic character of the building. When a property within a historic district is given permission to change a roofing material that has not been a part of the property's history, it can have a dramatic visual effect and diminishes the historic integrity of the structure. When many properties in the same vicinity undergo similar changes, this can have a dramatic effect on the overall character of the street, block, or neighborhood as a whole. This property was surveyed in 1980 as part of a larger citywide survey of historic structures, and at that time, the building did have a stamped metal roof. Bringing back the metal roofing material in this case would be an appropriate interpretation of the federal standards. And so staff recommendation is that application COA 22-000053 be approved.
Okay. Would the applicant like to add anything?
Mr. Chair, board members, my name is Robert Pierce. As I said at public comment at your last meeting last month, I would like to put on the, it's gone by different names over the years, but it's Tri-State, I think it's Tri-State Metals calls it the Ultra Rib. I gave you a letter last time from my insurance company. It was a forwarded letter that explained that a lot of the insurance companies are dropping people because their shingle roofs are older than 15 years. If I could have the overhead, that would be helpful probably. But anyway, and they said to the effect that if I could get a policy, it would cost thousands of dollars more. And I don't know about the new law thing that DeSantis, but all I know is in 3 weeks I'm going to lose my insurance. And so this is the Ultra Rib from Tri-State Metals. and it is galvalume. One comment I would make regarding the painted is that a metal roof costs more than a shingle roof as a general rule already. Painted costs more than the galvalume. I don't know what those price differences is, but I can tell you the painted is more. So that is something I did want to make a comment on so that you would be aware of that when you're discussing the issue. It was a duplex at one time when I bought it, and I turned it back into a single-family dwelling. Simplified life for me, and I think it works better internally as well as externally. The construction is actually, it's clay block, red clay block. It's not, the roof is wood frame, but the walls, the construction, just as a matter of interest, because that's the only house I have that's like that, and it is hard as a rock when you try to drill into it. That's all I have to say.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank
Unless
you.
you've got any questions.
okay. Any board questions or comment?
Just for the record,
Yes, sir.
that's referred to as structural clay tile.
I'm sorry.
Structural clay tile.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, no questions. Is there any public comment? Okay. Would anybody like to entertain a motion?
Move to approve move to approve with staff recommendation.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All right, Kathleen, would you like to do roll call?
Phil Haight.
Aye.
Elizabeth Hawk. Michael Hill.
Aye.
Rachel Iannelli.
Aye.
Isaac Kamal.
Aye.
Jay Reeves.
Aye.
Bill Warner.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Good luck.
Okay.
Public hearing 2. This is also an application for a metal roof. This is petition COA 22-000057. Address is 1021 Southwest 2nd Place. This is University Heights South. It's in 1940. Now this building for which they're applying for the new roof is actually the auxiliary structure in the back. The primary building that on the lot, the address is 1020 Southwest 3rd Ave. The building to the rear, for which this application is for, is a modest 2-story wood frame structure that features 6/1 double hung sash windows and an interior chimney. Interestingly, the corner entrance door is covered with a metal shed roof. The gable roof is currently clad with composition shingles. This COA application is to replace the asphalt shingle with a standing seam metal 26 gauge in galvalume. Our guidelines, I just read you all this for the last one, so you don't need to hear all that again. Permit research back to 1998 did not identify any roofing permit or change in material. It was not uncommon for an auxiliary or secondary structure to have metal roofs. And this board has traditionally allowed metal roofs for these types of buildings. These conditions allow the board more flexibility to consider the metal roof for this application. The primary structure was surveyed in 1980 as part of that bigger survey, but at that time, they did not survey this back building, so I don't have any specific information on that. Approving the metal roof request in this case would be an appropriate interpretation of the city's historic preservation guidelines, and staff recommends that application COA 22-000057 be approved based on the fact that there is metal on the entryway gable and it's the auxiliary building.
Okay. Is there anybody here to represent this project? Nope. Okay.
Move to approve.
Hang on. Is there any board comment?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm very familiar with this house. I had a friend that just moved out of it, I think within the last year. He lived in the bottom half of it. I want to point out that I am inclined to approve this because of its status as being basically an outbuilding of sorts. It really needs a roof on it.
Yeah, I can
It's
see
in
that.
bad shape, and if it doesn't get something on it soon, it's going to be in worse shape. And I'm really thrilled to see that someone's going to put some care into this little guy. It's real cute, and that alleyway is real neat. And there's a series of these structures that are also a little bit different, but in the same theme. And then finally, the metal over the side entry. That, if you look at it closely, it was put up with two. It's not original in any shape, in any way. But despite that, I think that this is a good idea. Thank you.
Okay, all right, Michael.
Yeah, so here's my question. So maybe this is to Ms. Kaufman. So there's not a master site file on this building at all?
Not,
No.
for the primary structure, there is. But this is the little building behind it.
Okay, and just to add more to that, then like I said, I'll stop asking. Now we know that it has historic windows, but like, is that it? Is that all it is? Because I'm worried here. It's like, what if this is a historic building that like?
Well, it's a contributing structure.
It's a contributing
We have
structure.
designated it as a contributing structure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So any changes to the windows, any future changes to the exterior of the building will come through you or staff.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And then I just. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. Yes, Bill.
I apologize if I missed this earlier, but this was on the previous one also about the color being silver galvanum.
Yeah.
Are we okay with that because of reflectivity, or are we not okay with that because of the reflectivity?
Could we possibly go with another color?
Because I mean, the other project that was before us, had a lot of tree cover and surrounded with a similar situation.
Well, this one, as you can see in the photograph, is a very
Low pitch.
low pitch as opposed to something that would be reflecting a whole lot of
Okay,
stuff.
so it would be possible to put a galvanum roof in the historic district.
That one's, it's only going to be people in planes that are going to notice the reflectivity as opposed to neighbors.
We've had discussions in the past when we were trying to determine the first time around about metal roofs, particularly silver galvanum roofs, and one of the things we tied it to is roof pitch, because if the roof pitch is steep, like you see in the Northeast District, a lot of them, the roof is all that much more apparent. But if the roof is fairly shallow, it's less of a problem. And I think this might be one of those instances where this kind of falls under that.
So it would be more a case-by-case basis.
It's going to have to be a case by
And this
case.
is also kind of on like a back alley too. It's not on like a main thoroughfare at all. Like, you would really have to like
Look for
go
it.
down an alley to look for this roof.
Yeah.
May I comment again, please?
Yes.
I would have to say that it should be noted that there's apartments here and here that are also 2 stories about the same thing. So in theory, upstairs at the neighboring places, this might be a little bit bright. But I don't think that warrants
Well,
us.
not on enchant because the reflectivity is not reflecting toward either of them.
Right, okay.
Mr. Chair, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So remember, we have not just not given them the right to ask for silver or galvanum. It just means they still have to come to this board, which these have. But this is an auxiliary structure.
Yeah.
So if any building in a historic district had a metal roof, it would have been the auxiliary structures. So.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? Some,
Move to approve COA 22-00057.
Second.
okay.
Phil Haight,
Aye.
Elizabeth Hawk,
Aye.
Michael Hill,
Aye.
Rachel Iannelli,
Aye.
Lisa Kamal,
Aye.
Jay Reeves,
Aye.
Bill Warner.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Public hearing 3. Let's do it.
Okay. Public hearing 3. This is petition COA 22-00058. 628 Northeast 2nd Street. This is in the Northeast District here, Duck Pond. Date of construction is 1933, according to the property appraiser, 1928, according to the Florida Master Site File form. We say at least 1928 because it's on the 1928 Sanborn map. And the owner is Joseph Nicholson. 628 Northeast 2nd Street is a classic early 20th century bungalow. It features thick wood knee braces, a front-facing jerkin head or clipped gable roof, casement windows, and rusticated brick porch supports with tapered piers. The original open porch has been partially enclosed, but the majority of it remains screened in. And the project is proposing a one-story addition to the rear of the house. An existing covered porch is being removed, and the new addition is 24.5 feet roughly by 30.4 feet long. In the southwest corner of the backyard, there's an existing concrete shed already there. This will not be affected as part of this project. The new addition will follow the lines and proportions of the existing house, featuring a gable roof, 2/2 wood with vinyl clad windows, and novelty siding of the same width as the existing building. The entire building is proposed to be re-roofed in standing seam galvanized metal. The property is zoned U4. The side setback requirements are 5 feet for interior lots, and the rear setback requirement is 15 feet. This proposed new addition is requesting a rear setback of 6 feet and a side setback only on one side of 3 feet. Overall, staff's evaluation is this. Overall, the rear addition is designed to be compatible with the historic structure, and it won't even be visible from the street. Design elements are in keeping with the character in the use of the matching siding and window styles. A rear addition can generally be, so this can normally be an administrative approval according to our guidelines. If it's in the rear of the house and not really visible, I could have done this administratively. However, the application is being brought to the board because this proposal includes a request for setback variances, there's a change in roofing material, and there's a window material being proposed that has not traditionally been approved by this board, and that is anything with vinyl in it. There is no evidence that this property originally had a metal roof. The Florida Master Site File Survey goes back to 1978. At that time, the roof was a composite shingle, and it says, see Exhibit 4 in your staff report. Exhibit 4 probably wasn't reprinted for you for this, for paper purposes, but it was emailed to you as part of that whole package. And Exhibit 4 is simply your Florida Master Site File form. The setback variance requested that they are requesting is reasonable. The current request for the new addition is 6 feet. It does not approach the rear property line as far as that existing concrete shed. So the existing concrete shed actually is closer to that rear property line than this new addition is being proposed for. And the only side setback to be affected is the north side. The new addition does not approach the side property line as far as the existing covered porch currently does. So the existing covered porch, which is being proposed to be demolished for this rear addition, actually encroaches much further into the side setback than the proposed addition. I hope I didn't confuse you too terribly. Vinyl windows, even in new additions to historic structures, have not been approved by the board for the Northeast Historic District. This includes wood windows clad in vinyl. There are more appropriate window materials. It could be wood, could be aluminum, or wood clad in aluminum, as these are the window materials set by the board as appropriate for this district. The Secretary of the Interior standards to be that apply in this situation are 4, 9, and 10. Standard 4, most properties change over time. Those changes that have acquired historic significance in their own right shall be retained and preserved. This is really mostly to do with the roof. There's no evidence to support the home ever had a metal roof. we know the existing shingle roof has been there for more than 40 years. Standard 9, new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. This new addition is compatible with the massing, size, and scale, will not detract from the historic building. The proposed new construction will not destroy those character-defining features contained in the historic portion of the house. Standard 10 is new additions or an adjacent or related new construction shall be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment would be unimpaired. Again, the related new construction isn't going to affect the historic aspects of the main property. Recommendation from staff. Staff recommends that application COA 22-000058 be approved with the following conditions. Condition 1, the roofing material should be composition shingle, or I guess now they could go with a colored metal roof, based on what we have just approved. Condition 2, the windows shall either be aluminum, wood, or wood clad. That's the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Doug, would you like to speak?
Hello, Mr. Chair, Board. I'm Doug Nesbitt, Atlantic Design. I'm the agent for the owner who's also here tonight. Just to add to the report, I apologize for the vinyl clad wood. It should have read aluminum for the windows, so we're completely
Okay, I wondered.
okay with that. I think we know better, but slipped through. Sorry. I think we're okay with the shingle roof as well. I think our hope was for metal, but we're open to suggestions. I know you guys have had a lot of conversation tonight about metal roofing, so I'm open to have any questions here too, if you have anything I need to answer for you.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? I think we're good.
Concern with the metal is it's right across the street from the Thomas Center. So I feel like this is an important home, so I would prefer it stay composite if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I think we're open to that compromise for sure.
Yeah, in this instance, just the plains is all to the
It's off
north
to the
and
side,
south,
yeah.
not toward town center.
And it's a fairly shallow roof, too. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's a distinctive piece of architecture, for sure.
Oh, yeah, well, with the clarification in regard, just for future reference, I know of no vinyl clad as a cladding material.
Right.
It's either vinyl or it's not.
Right.
That's not to be confused with the product that Marlin Window provides, which is Ultrex, which is a high-performance material where the outside can be the Ultrex and the interior is in fact wood. So what you see from the inside is into wood.
Yeah.
I was just going with what was on the application.
Yep.
And they said,
Well,
clad in vinyl. I'm like, no.
Understandable.
Doug's a busy guy.
It's okay, Doug, we forgive you.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments from the board? Is there any public comment on this one? Okay, thanks. We're good. All right, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve. Just,
Second.
Basically with what Mr. Nesbitt has notified that, no vinyl, as long as it's aluminum, I am okay with that.
Clad.
Sorry, clad, yeah. As long as it's clad and they stay with the composite shingles, that's my motion. I will move to approve as long as they stay with the shingles and keep the clad. Thank you. Sorry. Ugh.
Okay, we have a second. Okay, roll call.
Phil Hay.
Aye.
Ms. Hawk.
Aye.
Michael Hill.
Aye.
Rachel Iannelli.
Aye.
Isaac Kamal.
Aye.
Ray Reeves.
Aye.
Bill Warner.
Aye.
Motion
Thank you.
carries.
Thank you very much.
Good luck, guys.
Appreciate it.
Okay, that brings us to public hearing 4.
Public hearing 4. This is petition COA 22-000059. It does not yet have an address. It's got a parcel number. It's on the southwest corner of Northwest First Street and Northwest 7th Ave. It's Pleasant Street Historic District. It's the far eastern edge of that district. The owner is Jamal Togiani, and it is currently a vacant property. You probably remember where this property is because you approved the new construction right next door for Mr. Weinstein, the big, beautiful new house that has the separate garage structure and the brick breezeway in between. So this is a proposed new construction. It's 2-story single-family home with an attached additional dwelling unit and 1 detached. And if that's confusing you, our code now allows that. You can have 1 attached, you can have up to 2. You can have up to 2 additional dwelling units, but 1 has to be attached and 1 has to be detached if you're gonna do 2. The main 2-story home is 1,600 square feet. They'll have 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. Both of the ADUs are 850 square feet, and they have 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. The main structure is narrow but long. It features a front porch, a 1-car garage that is set back from the front facade, and gable and hip roofs. Siding on the ground floor is proposed to be hardy board and batten, with horizontal pine shiplap on the second floor. Doors are simple in nature, as we have requested our new construction in Pleasant Street to have. The windows are proposed to be 1/1s, single hung sash. The roof material is shingle. The materials for the ADUs are similar. Both the attached and detached ADU feature entry porches. The zoning for this property is RC, and the project complies with all the required setbacks. You have heard this language before about the Pleasant Street Historic District characteristics, and that is basically telling you that the forms and housing styles within this historic district really resulted from how this was affected by the rapid growth of the railroad, roughly 1850 to 1890, and that really kind of pushed how this district grew and became visually. Majority of the historic residences in this district are wood frame vernacular structures. The district also contains a number of bungalows and residences that reflect Queen Anne and colonial revival traditions. So when we have new construction, your city's design guidelines have specific applicable standards to ensure that new construction will complement the historic architecture. With sound planning and good design, new construction can respect and reinforce the existing patterns of a historic district. Good infill design actually does not have to directly imitate a historic structure or building in order to be successful. Instead, it builds on those patterns of construction, such as height, materials, roof form, massing, setbacks, and rhythm of openings. And that brings us to our 12 criteria used to evaluate the compatibility of new construction in historic districts. The first is the rhythm of the street. In Pleasant Street, the lots and blocks are primarily rectangular. Lot sizes are small with low to medium density. This is a vacant structure, vacant parcel. And as you know, we just don't like vacant parcels in our historic districts. So the fact that property is going to be built here for residential purposes is a good thing. It kind of fills in the gaps on the street. Setbacks. In Pleasant Street, the setbacks can vary considerably. This project complies with its setbacks. Height. In Pleasant Street, the buildings are primarily single-story and 1 bay wide. The proposed new structure is 2 stories. However, the new single-family home immediately to the south of this parcel is tall in height and is fairly wide with a separate garage attached with a brick breezeway. There are no buildings immediately across either street from this parcel. There's a one-story contributing structure to the west of the parcel that has a high-pitched gable roof. Because this property is on the edge of the historic district, the surrounding character of the neighboring properties is far different from some of the other applications you have seen come through here requesting new construction in Pleasant Street. The massing and height of the proposed building is really not out of place for this parcel because now we're kind of building on the precedent set by the previous house built to the one side of it. Roof forms. In this district, the primary roof forms are either side or front gable roofs, and the proposed roof form for this is consistent with the district. Number 5 is rhythm of entrances and porches. Porches are strongly encouraged in this district. They should be sufficiently sized to accommodate outdoor furniture and easy accessibility. The proposed new structure does have a front porch, although it's kind of minimal, but both ADUs also have front porch entryways. Number 6 is walls of continuity. In this particular district, the streetscape features are very minimal. Sidewalks and concrete curbing just don't happen very much in this district, and there are few fence lines that are fence-lined properties. There's virtually no walls. And this project does not propose any fencing or walls between the building and the street. 7 is scale of building. In Pleasant Street, the building scale is relatively small with one-story residences, low-pitched roofs, proportional bays and openings, and details that reflect the modest character of the neighborhood. The proposed new structure has good proportions of openings on the front and side facades. There are enough architectural details and articulations to break up any long expanses of wall space. And in regards to the scale of the building and some of the other architectural criteria that we've looked at, I will tell you the architect did come in several times, to make sure he was going down the right path for this. So there was a lot of pre-conference happening for this particular application. 8 is directional expression. There's nothing unusual about the way this house is sited on the property. It's in a, pretty basic east-west configuration, orientation. 9 is proportion of the front facade, the width of the building structure or object to the height of the front elevation. And the height of the building is offset by the relatively narrowness. The attached garage for the main structure is set back from the front facade. So I think that the proportion of the front facade is really in keeping with the style of the neighborhood. 10, proportion of openings. On the primary facade, the width and height relationship of the windows and doors are compatible compared to the opening proportions of other buildings that are within the visual proximity. We're almost done. Number 11, rhythm of solids to voids. The pattern and overall composition of the openings on the main facade are compatible with the adjacent historic buildings. You have a lot of the same rhythm type, window, door, window, or the different types of ratios that you see those things, walls versus windows and that sort of thing. And finally, details and materials is number 12, the last criteria we look at. And the proposed project is utilizing shingles for the roof, horizontal plank siding, board and batten siding, and they're mixing it up a little bit, and 1/1 sash windows. These are all materials that relate to the existing context of the historic neighborhood. And this is new construction, so there's only really not that many standards of the Secretary of the Interior standards that relate to new construction, but number 9 certainly does. And that says that new additions, exterior alterations, or new construction shall not destroy historic materials, which this is not because it's not replacing anything. New work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with massing, size, scale, and architectural features. This project complies with that in staff's opinion. So staff's evaluation is that the project complies with the guidelines for new construction and complies with the required setbacks in the zoning code. The charm and character of historic districts, and one of the very reasons they are special and worthy of protection, is because they are composed of structures that are each unique and different, with their own mix of details, fenestrations, proportions, even though materials and massing may be similar. This project utilizes similar materials to be consistent with other structures in the district, but it's clearly unique and different. The way they've mixed up the siding from the ground floor to the second floor, and all of the porch supports and cross beams as currently sketched read as a stark rectangular detail and do not provide much depth. And so that piece of it is the only condition in the recommendation from staff is that this COA 22-00059 be approved with the following condition, and that is that the porch system, the porch support, the cross beam, and the railings, and I'm sure they're going to be more detailed out, but I just want to make sure. I want to make sure that we don't approve this and it's just this square thing that's currently been sketched for the porch.
Yeah.
So that will be further detailed out to ensure the front porch system has some depth and character to be approved by the preservation officer.
Okay.
And I don't know if I said that right, but if you look on the drawings,
Yeah.
the actual front porch is kind of, and I realize these are preliminary sketches.
Well, that's why they would need to come back to you for final approval.
And that's the end of this lengthy staff report. Thank you for bearing through that.
Okay. All right, Mr. Kaplan.
I'm Andrew Kaplan. I'm the architect for the project. And I just want to point out a couple of things. One is that I put the garage on the side of the building that I put it on because it's adjacent to the garage next door, number one. And number two, because with these ADUs facing the side street, there's going to be parking from those on the side street. And I didn't want the parking for the house over there too, so it would just look like a great big parking lot. I was trying to separate that out. I put this separate ADU next to the little house that's to the west because I thought it was a little more in scale. It's a small house, but it's quite tall. The other thing is I have a memory, and I didn't research this, but my memory is that across the street to the north, years ago, there was an old house it was very old and a little crude, but it had board and batten or board and board siding. And I've had that stuck I like that little house, and I've had that stuck in my mind for years. It's gone, the property is vacant. And so that's why I put the board and batten on the bottom as kind of homage to that memory of what was there. We can do more detail on the porch columns and all. I did show the rafter ends exposed on the porches to give them a little sense of detail. And if that's a recommendation, I'm sure we can live with that.
Okay. Comments of the board?
Yes, I do have, Mr. Chair, a couple of comments.
Sure.
The exhibit number 2 to the example of next door, there's a clear distinction between the size of the massing of the accessory structure, the ADU, and the main massing of the house. Whereas in the proposal before us today, if you looked at the facade in the last page, it doesn't have an exhibit number. It seems like the two massing are actually competing, and it seems like it's just one single mass with a breezeway in between. So this is due to the size of the accessory, the detached accessory dwelling. It's a 2-story with a high gable roof also almost give it the almost equivalency of the same height of the main structure. The other thing is that the built-up area on the site, if we look at the regulation, the setback number 2, setbacks the size of the building, that's page number 3. It talks about whether in this area there should be a 20 foot rear setback. If there is an ADU, it's allowed to be 5 foot setbacks. But this is in principle that if we left it without the accessory dwelling, there's supposed to be a little bit of open space. If we added an ADU, there should be a space between the ADU and the main structure. Right now we see only a breezeway, so it seems like the site is packed with massing. They are competing also. One of them is ADU, supposed to be massing to be smaller in size compared to, so it's actually function as ADU. Right now it seems to be, again, and I don't want to repeat myself, it seems like it's just one mass and we happen to have like a tunnel or a breezeway in between. So just not to be negative all the time. Is there any way for the detached ADU to be either 1.5 story with like cutting portion of the mass at the side street where the second story is just a recessed portion? So instead of having 2 bedrooms, I believe should have only one that's towards the rear.
That's a complicated question. I'm not sure that the ADU is financially feasible if it only has 1 bedroom. And the drawing that you have, there's actually 2 sets of elevations for this project. I had the CAD drawings done and the which I'll lay out here. Ms. Kaufman and I looked at the drawings and decided that my hand drawings were just more presentable. But these are the elevations drawn in CAD. And you can see that we lowered the roof line on the ADUs a little bit. Excuse me. One of the requirements of the zoning is that the ADUs be somehow less prominent than the main building. So that's why I put the gable roof on the house, and I did not put gables on the ADUs, so that they were a little more tamed visually, and dropped the roof elevation a little bit.
With all due respect, I don't see them like much lower. It's still competing massing, and then there's no open space at all in the site. And I understand the density in the Pleasant Street neighborhood, but it doesn't seem to be that there is a space where the rear is taking advantage of the allowed 5 foot setback, but allowing an open space on the side. And it is competing also in height still, even if it's slightly lower, couple of feet from the main structure. That's not usually the overall principles of the guidelines put forward, is to have a smaller ADU in the rear of any major structure. So the essence are not there of the guidelines.
Well, if you look at the site plan, you'll see that in the middle of the site on the south side, there is some extra space. The ADU is brought forward so that there is some space in the back that all 3 units open up to.
Could you show us that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we can be talking about the same one. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
So you're talking the south.
Where is the open space?
There's the site plan in this area back here.
That's the east. Yeah.
This site was, it's
Oh,
tight
that's the
because
south,
it's on a
That
corner.
is the south.
and,
Yeah, because
Okay,
oh,
I see the north road.
Setback on
Yeah.
two sides.
gotcha. Okay.
How about the height? What other fellow members think about the height? I mean, even the example doesn't have a two-story height.
Mr. Chair, may I say
Yes.
So I actually quite like the idea of a smaller ADU on the end that's facing the one contributing structure that's even remotely nearby this property. But when I was reviewing this project, we looked at the ADU requirements. Neither one of the ADUs exceeds the ADU footage, and the detached ADU certainly does not overpower the initial primary structure.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I was looking at, but that's not to say, as is correct, you could look at that other single-family residence on the other side and say, well, there needs to be more of a step down from the big primary house to the other house. But the other thing I was really taken by was this location. So you all know how we fight to the death over the interior lots in Pleasant Street and some of those smaller lots for houses that really have no business being designed there. This is the far east edge of the district. It's sort of like this weird industrial commercial.
Yeah.
it's like a transit.
It's very transitionary.
Right.
It's facing the parking lot. It's facing its primary face. It's facing the parking lot of a commercial structure to the rear, and then on the other side, it's got the vacant parcels, and then more commercial further north to that. So it is a little bit different of a context issue with this particular parcel, which is why you all approved that other house next door to kind of be a little bit more spread out, because it was somebody that was coming in and proposing to do a really quality project,
Right.
which wasn't just overdoing the site, and it was a double lot, so you were considering the factors for that particular case.
Yep.
And that's kind of what I was looking at here, but
Yep.
I agree. The second detached ADU could be a little bit more,
Step down.
a little smaller in scale, less of the height. I don't really want to reduce you by a bedroom, but
Well, it also depends on what gets built on the adjacent lot. If it's a two-story building, then all of a sudden it's not an issue any longer.
If it got approved by us as well, right?
Right.
Which is another question in the future. But to be honest, I don't want to say it need to be dropped to one floor, and instead, because of the financial feasibility, it still could be a 1.5, which is usually the compromising approach to make something in the second floor, but also to shrink down the massing a little bit. So it's actually is not dominating and is not competing with the primary structure.
Could
So
I
I'm
also-
just going to tell you up front, I will not be able to vote yes on this.
Could I also point out that the property across the street to the north is zone U6, which is a much higher density, and whatever gets built on that lot is liable to be certainly be multi-story building
Correct.
facing this property.
Yeah. Okay.
And as you can see, this is the view across the intersection, and there are houses facing one-story commercial buildings and their parking lots.
Okay.
Mr. Kaplan, I know I give you a hard time a lot, but I think that this is one of your more thoughtfully designed homes for the site it's on. It is a weird lot. It is a weird area in Pleasant Street. It's in that boundary. I do wish there was a little bit more difference in like the main house and then the ADU, like the attached ADU, because it looks kind of weird to me on the drawing. I don't think I'm visualizing it correctly, but I do appreciate you doing some throwbacks to homes you remember, and of course the porches. The porches looked a little more developed on the sketches. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, Michael?
Yeah, Mr. Kaplan, just kind of to say what everyone else is saying. Yeah, now I'm going to ask you, is there any way on the attached unit and maybe on the detached and attached ADU, is there any way where we might be able to possibly reduce the scaling so it doesn't just look like a giant block, but not compromise, the potential of losing a bedroom? Because I imagine the applicant doesn't want to have to compromise that, because that's like I said, economically that's not worth it at this point. You know what I mean? So,
Yes, and I will have to study that and see what can be done.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I got a comment, and this is a different issue. I get a little bit of an issue with the attached garage on the side of it there, because if you look at the floor plan, the face of the garage is really in line with the face of the house above that little bay that's on the porch. And that garage is fairly prominent. And I remember when we were talking about the house next door, we were really clear about it being, separated so that the garage looked like an accessory structure next to the house. Now, I understand pushing it back is what your intention is here, but it's not quite pushed back enough is my issue. And if you're going to have a front-facing garage, you need to do something more than a standard garage door. I would say it would need to be a carriage-style door. And what I would suggest to you, because obviously you're limited by the site, very limited, is could you possibly bring it back about 3 feet and then take your porch, swing it the other direction, and then turn the gable around where it spans from the front of the garage to lower the roof a little bit visually, and then comes down on the back of the porch.
I say again about the roof line? I didn't
Okay.
follow that.
Right now, you've got what appears to be, if I can get it in front of me, I've lost it. There it is. It looks like a hip roof coming on
Yes.
to the side. What I was going to suggest is take the porch, because you say you're going to push the garage back to where that door coming out of the living room is. Turn the porch the other direction so it's just a continuation of the back of the garage. Start a gable at that point that comes up and then lands right over the garage door. Now, that may be too broad and it may go too high on the side, but that's just was a suggestion. The other suggestion would turn the whole thing into a hip like you were doing. But what I was trying to do is make the porch essentially the same size it is now by turning it the other direction.
Yes, I think that could work.
And then that would definitely slide it back from the face of the house. And if, like I said, if you put carriage-style doors that have more of a vertical emphasis, I think that would be acceptable then, because the house next door has very horizontal garage doors, which are kind of the norm.
Okay.
Okay? And that's just me being critical. I don't know how everybody else feels. But attached garages are not really a historical house form over there yet. There is a realistic need. But the problem you're experiencing is the fact you've got too much building on this size lot already.
That's very tight.
Yeah, I know. And, I certainly wouldn't want the project to go forward. Absolutely. So that's a compromise I'm throwing out there, if everybody else agrees.
Unless the owner sacrifices the garage and becomes just a carport, which could be.
Carport's not really a historical form either.
It could be just detached, just.
There's no room for it, it's the problem. I wish there were.
Now, Jay, question. Now, if, judging by our drawings here,
Yeah.
now if they go to the detached, you know, they're not gonna meet the setback variance in the side.
No,
which means
there's
they're-
not enough room. No.
Yeah, I mean, even if they shift it this way, which,
In fact, there's only got one option.
Yeah.
What's the property zoned for?
RC,
RC.
residential conservation.
So how about if the detached ADU become the garage, and then the garage become the other unit?
Do what? I'm not following that.
The detached will just become the garage, which is similar to the example we're looking at, and it become like a one-story.
There's not enough room.
No, there's not.
There's not enough room.
It's,
If you see on the site plan here, the dashed line
Yeah,
is the setback.
that's your
line.
setback lines, right. You're right up against your setback lines.
That's
over there.
on all four sides.
Yeah.
So,
well, in the current design, it's not room, but the design could always be amended.
I don't see a lot of room to do anything differently because you're already maxed out.
Everything could be squeezed.
So we're looking at three things, basically. The adjustments we talked to about the garage, some more detail on the front porches, and trying to reduce the height, the visual height of the ADUs.
Question, how does everybody feel about the idea of the ADU being a slab on grade and not as tall as the main house, which visually would bring it down?
so you mean like so Jay, you mean
Not the detached one.
the attached? So, wait, so Jay, so you're saying that basically the ADU that's attached to the main
No,
residence?
that one,
No.
not detached.
It is.
I don't think so.
It wouldn't be on a raised elevation.
I think this is more harmonious with.
Yeah,
principal
well, that's why I'm
structure.
asking, because I don't feel that's really all that good a compromise either.
No. I
That
don't
would
think
bring them
that
down a
solves-
couple of
that-
feet,
that
but
doesn't
it's
solve
not
the problem.
really,
I don't think it's worth it. And honestly, you're being more consistent with the neighborhood to have it raised.
Yeah.
Except for the HUD houses, which we're trying not to appear like.
okay.
Yeah, you're right, Jay, because they have the little things at the bottom.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, so are we gonna come back
You're at.
with
you're
that?
right
Is
at
that the,
1, 2, 3.
I'm sorry?
The 3 points you made.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Well, at this point,
So can you have someone make a motion to defer then to the August
I'll
meeting?
I'll make a motion to defer this item to the next meeting.
Continue.
Oh, Phil beat you.
That's fine.
Got you that time.
All those in,
Phil Haight?
Aye.
Liz Hawk?
Aye.
Phil?
aye.
Rachel Iannelli?
Aye.
Azza Kamal?
Aye.
Jay Reeves?
aye.
Bill Warner?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
All righty,
Board business, here we go.
we're coming. Gotta get my agenda open. Okay, that brings us to board business. Okay, you going to go run down it, or are you going to?
I emailed you all the information for the Florida Trust Conference. And yes, you can, I got confirmation, you can, register under City of Gainesville Historic Preservation Board, and it's $125
Oh, yeah, baby.
That's
there we
great.
go.
for the full conference.
Yeah.
That includes all workshops, any tours, and all the events.
Okay, good news.
Okay, good to know.
I will be there, So if you've never been to a Florida Trust Conference and you want me to help you find out what that's all about, I'd love for some of you to be able to come. If you can swing a hotel room or something.
Will we be cosplaying at this conference?
Cosplay.
No.
There's no cosplay at the historic
No.
conference?
Well, actually, there are sometimes because they dress up as the historic reenactment for the reenactments.
Can I be like a train conductor or something like that?
That could be interesting
Yeah.
with Main Street being the theme.
That's right. Right. And then I also emailed you separately this lady who is trying to get a National Register nomination going for the church in Porters, the Crown of Life Ministries. And she got a couple of really nice support letters. And, you know, I let her know that a National Register nomination is a lot of work.
Yes, it is.
However, the state is super conscientious now,
Yeah.
finally, that not everyone can afford, you know, to pay a preservation consultant for the hours and hours and hours of time it used to take for this full-on thesis type nomination.
Yep.
So I would very much love it if we could also give her a resolution from this board to support her efforts. I told her I'd help out as best as I could with my time, but I think the state will be very happy to kind of help her along and get that going. So if it's in your desire to offer up a resolution for the board to support that effort, that's up to you.
Michael.
Oh yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Kaufman, question. Now for this, and again, feel free to. I'm thinking like this might be the answer, but like I might be wrong here. Could she possibly apply if with our support? Could she possibly apply for a small matching grant to do the National Register, or would that be? Is that just too overboard?
No, you couldn't.
It would take too long to get the grant.
Yeah.
It'd take too long to get the grant. Yeah, see, okay, that's what I was worried about.
Government.
Yeah, because I know like small matching is for like planning and stuff like that. If you're doing like work on historic buildings, I'm like, oh,
Hey, technically, I think you can actually. I think you can use small matching grant because you can use it for planning.
Yeah.
Type activities, surveys,
yeah.
and reports and architectural assessments and that sort of thing. But I think their desire is to go for this now, not a year and a half from now.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, because they'd have to wait on it.
They have to wait a whole year.
I move a resolution in support of assistance to the applicant.
Absolutely, I will second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I won. Okay, and there was something I wanted to add in if I could. Wanted to talk about the single-family zoning issue. Is there an update on that? What's happening?
I don't know the update necessarily for that, other than that it's very contentious.
Yep.
So they're supposed to be
And-
having a meeting Wednesday at 5 p.m.
Mhm.
specifically on that issue. Here, the commission is.
Okay.
I will be there.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
A meeting that you're gonna vote or a meeting to?
They are supposed to vote.
It's just, so it will be a crowded house.
Are they going to like
As in tomorrow, Wednesday?
No, next Wednesday, the
What time?
13th
5 o'clock?
at 5 p.m.
13th at 5 o'clock. Okay, good.
Because okay, I haven't kept up too much about it, but like, is that true? Like they're going to try to get rid of single-family zoning? Like, what is up with that?
I think that is the intent.
That is what they're
That
doing.
is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every-
I have a question in regard to the proposal for Southwest Second Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
Story.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that?
Well, can we finish the single family
Oh,
issue
yeah.
first?
Yeah, that'd be good.
So my concern with the commission's zoning changes, I don't think it's gonna impact my neighborhood, right? Like, I already live in a mixed neighborhood, I've got little apartments, little duplexes. I'm deeply worried about Porters and Pleasant Street.
Right.
Because I feel like this is gonna be a method for developers to come in, buy up these small little houses, tear them down, and throw up duplexes, and it'll
Right.
all be to code, and as long as, you know, it looks right, we'll have to approve it.
And so that's my concern, is I'm really concerned about our historically black neighborhoods and the impact it's going to have. And I also think from the feedback I've seen from homeowners, a lot of black homeowners are not happy with this zoning change. And I think the commission desperately wants to do something productive that they think will help maybe 10 years down the road. But I think they're going about it in the wrong way. And no one ever puts up statues for people who focus on the small details, right? We like big picture ideas, and that's why I'm gonna be there, because I'm very worried about how this will impact our homes in places like Porter's and Pleasant Street. And even like University Heights South, which we're seeing more and more, that's where the CHW development is planned in that neighborhood. The neighborhoods close to campus are going to be the most impacted, and I don't think the homes going in, which is not really my purview on the Historic Preservation Board, but it's not going to be affordable housing, right? It's going to be market rate rentals for new faculty, professional staff, students.
Or Airbnbs.
Or Airbnbs for football games.
It's not going to keep people here.
If it's next Wednesday, there's enough time for me to, if you want to pass a resolution, that will be given to the commission. But if you do that, I would love some verbiage, to help write that as to what your position actually is. And I got just a good amount from what you just said. But if anybody else wanted to chime in, or if you think a resolution is worth it.
Yeah, I definitely want to chime in there. That I've been watching this thing from the first time I heard about doing it over a year ago, when 40 some of us spoke to the commission about this issue. And my observation is this has nothing to do with promoting affordable housing.
No.
Absolutely nothing. This is all about property development at market rate. That's all it is. And it will obliterate Fifth Avenue and Porters.
Well, it already is.
There will be history.
Yeah.
So, I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Everything. Now, with that question, now here's the thing, and correct me here if I'm wrong. Now, I know that Fifth Avenue has residential conservation zoning, so it means it falls kind of under the same zoning as Pleasant Street does. Now, my question is that, are we able to possibly maybe go into the land? Is it possible for us as citizens to maybe request that maybe the land use and the zoning be changed in these neighborhoods where we know for an absolute fact they will be wiped off the map with gentrification? Is there a way for us to change that? Because I understand that unfortunately with the dilution of the residential conservation zoning, where now you can stick 3 buildings on one plot, it's kind of bad. But I feel like that at this point, if at the rate we're going, there's going to be skyscrapers in what is Porter's Quarters now and Fifth Avenue. So I'm wondering, is there a way to stop that?
Yeah. Well, that's
Can we make a
Not with the current commission.
not with the current commission. You can't.
not with the current commission?
But I just want to chime in here for the zoning, for the concerns that Liz was explaining. Even if the zoning has changed, because we have seen this many times in areas around the urban core of San Antonio, even if the zoning says in some area it was like R33, they couldn't put 33 units in one lot because they will, when they come before the Historic Preservation Board, it's still, we look at compatibility.
Well, it's limiting.
We have the power to look at the compatibility. We will allow more density for sure, because that's going to be permitted, but to what extent?
Well, it's not saying there's going to be a new seminary lane on every lot. What it's saying is you could buy a lot with a historic home on it, tear that down and put in a duplex.
You can't,
based on the lot
because
size.
to tear that down, it's still going to abide by the demolition processes.
You can in neighborhoods that are not that are not historic
Well,
districts.
Not
That's the
historic,
issue.
yeah.
And I think, yeah, the issue is we have many neighborhoods that should be designated, but are not
They're
yet.
not.
And there's no way we're gonna be able to hurry up and get all these designated
Yeah.
or something.
Honestly, I'm not just worried about Porter's and Fifth Avenue. I'm also worried about like Gulfview,
Yeah,
which is, I had already had problems with people wanting to chop everything up into quadruplexes.
Now, my question is this: now with all these neighborhoods under threat, could we possibly get them into the Main Street program, and kind of turn them into a CDC so they have more protection over themselves, or, is that going to be
That's
hard?
a monumental undertaking.
It is.
It is.
So how is the Housing Commission is doing in all this conversation? Because this should come from us and them, not just the City Commission.
I think the decision to change it is within the city commission's hands.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
I know the plan board voted against what the commission wanted, and their recommendation was, I can't remember the term, but they had some specific zonings that they wanted to see to protect single-family homes. But I know that there are 4 votes on the commission to eliminate single-family zoning.
Yeah, right.
And I
now-
recognize that it still has to come before the Historic Preservation Board, but there's nothing saying that the board will always be friendly to historic preservation. It could easily become something, because the commission appoints us, and if the commission decides to change their mind, they could stack development-friendly people on this board, and so that's why I,
happened before, by the
Yeah, I
way.
worry.
It was
They
3
did.
people being, yes, 3 people specifically were eliminated from the board. Very, very good fellow board members of mine.
And again, it only comes to this board if it's in one of our districts.
yeah.
But that does not mean we as a board, as, Friends of Preservation and Friends of the Gainesville history aren't concerned with some of these other areas.
Yeah.
That will be affected and we won't be able to do anything about it because it's not a designated district.
And, it's interesting because have been giving this a lot of thought and trying to take a historical perspective on it. The neighborhoods we have, the historic districts, wouldn't have happened if there'd just been single-family zoning in place. Because most of them happened before zoning existed, and they are mixed up. I mean, Duck Pond's a wonderful example of that. But the problem is nowadays, the motivation for development is money, developers and money. Which I don't understand how we're going to get to affordable housing if that's the case.
That's exactly what I was going to talk
Doesn't-
about. Is there any study, are they gonna vote on Wednesday? That's the
The
way.
13th is when they're supposed to.
So how long we know that they will, the whole thing going to vote on the 13th? Because there should be like a study predicting, back to your point and your point, Mr. Chair, how many individuals or households would likely be impacted by property tax increase should that zoning voting, the voting on the zoning goes into effect? That should be the number that goes before those commissioners. Because any pressure will result in evictions will result partially into homelessness, and then the whole community will struggle.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the commission just hired an outside consulting
Out of
firm
New York, yeah.
to throw this together. They didn't do any
The
studies.
New York consultant has been there for a while, since before I moved in here. This is the first thing that was
Okay,
told.
I pointed out at our last board meeting, having been to a presentation by that consultant who named historic preservation as an obstacle to affordable housing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And
which is,
as far as I understand from the planning department, the sustainable development department, the consultant is there to do the comprehensive plan. This is totally different from just doing a housing needs and housing production assessment. This should require someone who would track the property tax appraisal historically and the changes, and then the incremental change based on the land price and zoning change. This is totally much more detailed and focused on property taxes and housing, not overall comprehensive plan. And as far as I know, I haven't heard of anyone
I don't think the
doing
city's
this.
done any sort of, they're basically, from my understanding, they're looking at what President Obama the guidelines the Obama administration had for zoning changes for housing, and they're trying to implement those here. So,
And now federally, just last month, there's been more incentives from HUD towards the mixed income and mixed use type of development, which is great. But how much of that is going to be on the agenda for the voting? Is the voting to wipe out just a single family, or put additional precautions to prevent evictions or to eliminate potential evictions?
Yeah, is there
I
any,
think it's to eliminate it altogether.
it's to eliminate it.
yeah, is there anything to talk about neighborhood preservation at all? Because, you know, you can build.
Without
There was
numbers,
a
you're
really-
not going to be able to make any.
There was some really good articles about it in Sunday's paper,
Mm-hmm.
and so I have it here to remember to send you all that article as part of your,
Thank you.
as part of
Big
your
fan.
article packet.
Yeah.
Okay, and
So the actual item on the agenda is an ordinance of the City of Gainesville, Florida, amending future land use element and map of the comprehensive plan by amending the single-family land use category and associated property as more specifically described in this ordinance, providing directions to the city manager, providing a severability clause, a repealing clause, and an effective date, and then there's staff reports all connected. And then they're doing the legislative rezoning amendment to single-family zoning districts and an amendment regarding neighborhood scale multifamily dwellings. So those are the three things they're gonna vote on next Wednesday.
Okay.
One of the other main problems is that we either talk about single family or multi-family. There's nothing in between. And I don't know how much of comprehensive plan kind of discussion is addressing the missing middle, like the townhomes, 2 to 3 story duplexes. That's what should it be. And it should be tied to incentives for developers in specific areas what exactly you mentioned, Liz, which is what we see from my students' work. All the perimeters, especially in the east side, that's adjacent to the just on the perimeter of the campus block. This is where we see most of the impact.
Yeah. Okay.
So am I writing a resolution?
Yes, well,
Yeah.
I think I moved to support that.
I will second that motion to support a resolution.
All those in favor? All right, I thought we did that.
So what, I'm sorry, what's the language of the resolution? Shouldn't we have?
Well, that we've got to
ask
give
for-
Kathleen
Okay, ask for specific impact
points.
analysis for the complete change in the.
Well, what I usually do is I go back and I listen to that discussion and I actually type it all out. And so yes, that particularly, will be one of the clauses, but I'll try to frame the resolution as whereas the board thinks this, and the board thinks this, and the board thinks this, and the board thinks you should have a specific impact analysis before making any decision of this magnitude that could potentially affect thousands of residents.
From now on.
Yeah.
One thing too, I would like to add, Ms. Kaufman, if it's possible, and Mr. Chair, feel free to tell me no. I don't think that'd be too crazy. Please, in the resolution, can we include not only the impact study, but also can we at least have somewhat, again, of the bare minimum of kind of some talk about preservation of already established neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods of working class folks? Because, it's ultimately what it sounds like, they're just trying to promote gentrification throughout this entire community, whether it's, and it doesn't, and at this point, it almost seems like it's not racially based, it's just, it's not racially directed, it's directed at everybody. So if we could, I would like to have some talk about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Protect our working class
The
community.
preservation of our endangered neighborhoods that may not yet be protected by designation.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
acknowledging their lack of protection, but their significance nonetheless.
Yeah.
You will wipe them out.
Okay.
Can I ask a question regarding this? I've been wanting to delve into understanding this better. It is so nebulous and also very depressing. But is there, and then what you were saying about the impact analysis, like actual data where the city could, we could have a meatier discussion about this, right? If we had this data. But at what point doesn't somebody think we should sue the city and say, and I'm not big on, but isn't there some sort of legal action that could be taken? And I mean, not necessarily by our board.
No,
Does
not by
anyone
our
have?
board.
Not unless you want this board to go away tomorrow.
Yeah.
I wonder if there.
Especially the new ordinance.
Yeah, I wonder if there weren't people in the community, like sort of neighborhood association-esque folks who
But
would.
they actually, that article.
Is that part of, yeah.
Referring
there's
to,
gonna be a-
there are some little groups of neighbors that are, coming together to,
Right now, there are several different kind of email communities out there that appear in the paper and online that in a contemporary way, or what was going on in the duck pond that led to the development of Historic Gainesville, Inc. in the first place as a corporate entity that did in fact sue. So I think there's the fomenting of that kind of activity out there that may indeed lead to the coalescence of these different communities into
Really challenging the power of the city commission to make this sweeping changes. Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Bill, did you still want to bring up the building on Second?
yes. So,
Oh, yes.
yes, the proposed 12-story and 5-story building in our historic district, or on the edge of our historic district. Interestingly enough, this morning I received several calls from people in the neighborhood saying there's a new sign posted on the property and it says July 14th. So July 14th is not the date I was told that item was going to the commission. I was informed that it was going to the commission on Thursday, the 28th, or whatever that last Thursday's commission, last of the month, Thursday commission meeting is. I believe it's the 28th. So as this just happened today, and I haven't been able to get any answers as to what that is even about, I don't even know what to tell you. I do know that people in the neighborhood have not received any kind of mailed notification about something happening on the 14th.
It's also not on the agenda, but there's like fire assessments.
Yeah, it's not on either agendas.
So please send me that photograph.
Will do, Kathleen. Hold on. I'm trying to enhance it because I got it at a distance and you can't really read it. But I mean, it was,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I can go by tomorrow and see it.
Can the
Yeah,
board?
do that, if you will, please, and get that word out to us.
Right.
Several people have asked me to let them know when this was going to come up.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've notified some people myself. So
Here's my concern. So those of you that attended the plan board meeting where it finally got denied after, being tied. Some of the members on the plan board were throwing around options for them, like, well, just bring the whole thing down to 8 floors. And I think, if they were desperate enough to try and get something approved for that lot, that they would be probably moving to that. I have no idea what now actually is going to be presented at the final. If it's the 14th.
If it's the 14th.
I don't even know the date, and I don't know what the actual thing might actually be presented. My concern is this. So if they revise their project to kind of appease the plan board and the issues the plan board had and why they ended up denying it, let's say it's 8 floors across the board. Well, that's still double, that is double the height of what's allowable in our buffer.
Right.
And I think it was you, Rachel, that had this great comment. I think it was you. Somebody had this great comment about stop saying this imaginary blue line. Like, there's nothing imaginary about it. It is in code.
I didn't make that comment at the time, but I wrote it in my notes, and they were, and I think they said it several times, but I noticed it in watching rewatching the video, because I had left before you actually spoke, and it was somewhere in that mix there towards the end when he was getting quite frustrated.
Yeah, they keep referring to our buffer as this imaginary blue line.
Imaginary
It's
line.
not imaginary.
Right.
It's absolutely in code. And my concern is, so if you just think, if the powers that be think, oh wow, the developers are acquiescing so much, let's just approve this. Well, if you ask for something completely outrageous, that doesn't mean you should meet them to halfway outrageous.
Right.
It still is double the height in our buffer, and that is very dangerous precedent.
It is. It's
For not just that district, for all of them.
Well, what emerged in that conversation was the loophole that the south side of Second Avenue is like 201 feet from there. It's facing.
It's facing across the street, and
It
Kathleen
is.
brought that up.
If it was 50 feet, it's no different. It's facing this stupid-ass wall that is so, I mean, it will look worse than the building across from the Hippodrome in terms of its completely out-of-place appearance.
Are you talking about the hotel that they built
Around the historic
blue
house? Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean,
And
that
that's
is,
only a 5-story building.
that's only 5. This would
So
look
that is a really great
twice
analogy.
as dumb as the one across.
That's
from the
actually a really great analogy, because I think most people in Gainesville actually shudder when you talk about the building next to the Hippodrome.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So if you can imagine something twice that high.
Yeah, and it's a weakness in our current guideline structure for planning.
Yep.
I'm just disappointed that the commission is so willing to give things away for like 8 units that are affordable, or 10 units that are affordable. They're
not planning.
They're so willing to
And they are not even,
affordable.
they're not even affordable. That when you listen to the whole transcript there, well, the guidelines means people that make a little less than everybody else. Not,
It's also
not-
quite fluid because
not affordable.
it's not written in stone.
Yeah.
It's not a promise.
Yeah.
And so that's
Oh,
what-
other developers have reneged, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm so worried that the commission is just going to continually give away our neighborhoods and our city on these, empty promises. Like,
Can I ask a question about and I think this is really critical. There was a couple things that happened at that planning board meeting too, where the fellow that was sitting in the back with you, I can't remember his name, he was talking about how that building was supposed to sort of continue that wider sidewalk like Infinity Hall has, so then it could come across the street and jump, and then all of a sudden it would have to get real skinny again where those houses start. And I don't think the two houses, going west of that, are necessarily contributing structures.
They're not.
Right. I used to live in one of those, so I was like, wow, that's not interesting. I don't know
Should
how
have
that-
been.
Yeah, honestly, both of them. But so that sort of sidewalk transition, awkward, crazy awkward, and huge amounts of people spilling out from that building, at 8:30 because class starts at 9:10, and all moving in the same direction. That seems problematic on multiple levels. There was that. Oh, and then the codification of the fact that across Second Avenue is not in our buffer zone because it's a street that's 200 feet wide,
Right.
that we've got to do something about writing something, a caveat somewhere.
Right.
It seems to me that that will happen again
Yeah,
in
no,
some
for
other
sure,
context
for
as well.
sure,
It
that
just
needs,
doesn't make sense.
that needs to be addressed in
I
our
mean,
code.
Isn't
It does,
across the street from that is, should be 100, and across the street from this is 100. You're talking about a 1 foot, if it's 201 feet or something. Is that really what
That
we're
would be
getting
like,
at?
Yeah.
that would be like putting a
Across the
marijuana
street is
dispensary across the
across
street
the
from a
street.
school, because there's a school. Like,
Yeah,
It's, that,
it
that's,
all boils down to across the street, whether it's 40 feet wide or 200 feet wide. It's across the street.
it sort of speaks to them talking about the imaginary blue line though, doesn't it? If they can sort of chip away at our actual buffer and make us try to pretend that there's a compromise there, well then that 200 across the street becomes negligible, and that should not be the case, right? Obviously, we all agree with that, but they're strategizing for sure. It makes me, from what you just said, and also remembering back to that, they didn't want a 12-story building, they wanted an 8, so they went for 12 to 15 and asked for 4 more feet. This is all a strategy on their part. And then they get upset, and then we say, well, and no, don't back down. We can't back down on that one. We can't.
I think this one gets up. University Heights South is done.
You
They're
think
just
they're
gonna squeeze the whole neighborhood, around.
It's gonna look so weird. There's like a bunch of
Yeah.
skyscrapers, and it's like, oh look, like a patch of single-family zoning, and then skyscrapers.
Giant sorority houses.
Listen. Libertarian economics doesn't work for affordability. That's all I'm saying for the record.
And on that note,
And on that note, anything else, or are we done?
7:59.
We are done.
Meeting adjourned.